On the webinar tonight. Before we get started, I just wanted to go through a couple of the webinar procedures. There's two ways to listen in tonight. You can use your telephone, just listen through your phone. This is actually usually a little more consistent. You get a better audio from it. But you can also use your mic and speakers if you want to listen through your computer. We've got a lot of people on the webinar tonight, which is fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and have everybody muted so we're not picking up each other's background noise. There are also two ways to ask a question tonight. This is your time, and so we absolutely want to hear your questions. If you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can click the raise your hand icon and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question. Or if you'd like to ask a written question, you can type it into the chat box and we will answer it. We've got a few people on the webinar with you tonight. We've got Keith Marciniak, the APHA Senior Director of Student and New Practitioner Development. And then I am Lauren Bodie, your APhA-ASP Speaker of the House. We're also going to hear from a few really great guest speakers as we go throughout tonight's program. So now that you know us, we'd like to get to know you. So what is your role within the APhA-ASP chapter? I'm going to turn it over to Keith to open up the poll.
Great, thank you very much, Lauren. You have a couple different options here. So what is your role within your APhA-ASP chapter? Are you the current policy vice president, chapter president, president-elect, your state association liaison, chapter delegate, or other chapter officer or chair? And about 70% of you have voted already, so we'll give you another 10 seconds. 5 seconds. And we are going to close the poll there. So it looks like about 66% of you on the call this evening are chapter policy vice presidents, followed by chapter presidents with 18%, and then 10% other officers and chairs. So I really applaud those other officers and chairs for jumping on the call this evening. We really appreciate you guys participating.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about a lot of things because APhA-ASP has a lot to offer in terms of policy and advocacy programming. But before I talk about the what, I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the why. So our presidential theme this year is Live Your Why. And APhA-ASP has been incredible for me in letting me live my why in pharmacy, professional advocacy and policy development. Excuse me. I'm actually joining you from India, where I attended the World Congress, which is of a whole bunch of student pharmacists. So it is extraordinarily early in the morning for me. So please excuse me if I mix my words. But to me, my why for policy is that policy is patient care. And you know, we're so comfortable with the idea that patient care is taking someone's blood pressure or giving them a vaccine, and it absolutely is. But to me, patient care is also making sure that we as a profession develop good policy and that we advocate for it. Because policy determines whether a patient can afford their medication. It determines whether they can see a pharmacist to get services they need. So to me, policy is patient care, and that is why I've been involved in policy and advocacy since as a first-year student pharmacist, all the way through my last year of pharmacy school. And I hope that throughout the webinar, you'll see that there's so much that APhA-ASP offers in enabling student pharmacists to take an active role in their profession and take care of their patients at the same time. So that's my why. But I'd really like to know yours. So you can tell us either here in the chat box this evening, or you can send us an email to the Policy Standing Committee at that address below. Either way, we'd really love to hear from you. And if you share tonight, we'd love to share some of those with the group. So for policy vice presidents in the audience, what are your roles and responsibilities? So we have a document up that has lots of good detailed information about our various initiatives and the things that you should do to help your chapter be successful in those initiatives. And I would definitely advise taking a look at that. But really, As Policy Vice President, your role is to engage your chapter members in policy development and professional advocacy. All of our activities, all of our policy and advocacy programming comes down to this, is getting student pharmacists engaged and excited about what we do. So let's start talking about the policy development process. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith for another poll question, and that's, what is the name of the document that the APhA-ASP policy development process details?
All right, your answers tonight are the APhA-ASP prescription, APhA-ASP RX for policy, the APhA-ASP capsule, APhA-ASP policy guidelines, or none of the above. About half of you have voted already. We'll give it another 10 seconds. 5 seconds. And we are going to close it. So it looks like 49% of you said the APhA-ASP policy guidelines, 41% said the capsule, and 8% said RX for policy. And the actual answer is the APhA-ASP capsule. So the number 2 vote this evening is the winner.
Great. So while I myself actually am a fan of APhA-ASP RX for policy, it is the capsule, like Keith said. So we're going to talk a little bit about the policy development process on tonight's webinar, but definitely go take a look at the document called the capsule, because it is going to be kind of a guide for you throughout the process. So here's a schematic of the process. It starts from you and your chapter, goes all the way to the mid-year regional meetings, passes through the resolutions committee, which is comprised of the 8 regional delegates, and ultimately we vote on it at our APhA-ASP House of Delegates at the annual meeting. And then, most importantly, those resolutions get implemented by the Policy Standing Committee, the NEC, and ultimately you, the chapter members, will implement the resolutions that get passed. But right now, we are at this first part of the process, an individual at a chapter developing an idea and a chapter submitting a resolution to be considered at the mid-year regional meetings. As Policy Vice President, it very frequently falls to you to help get the process started at the chapter level by helping people brainstorm ideas and getting people involved. So my advice to you now is to start gathering ideas for resolutions. I've put a picture of a running list that I've kept for the last 3 years or so of just ideas that come up. So things like any problem I find, anytime something comes up at work that I feel like really shouldn't be, I write it down. Or anytime I come across a good idea, I'll write it down. And you'll also see that some of these, they're just problems. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know yet how I need to fix it, but I just know that it needs to be fixed, which means that it's a place that policy can happen. So I would encourage you to either start your list on your phone or some other way that's going to work for you. And the other thing to start doing now is to start formulating a plan to include your chapter in the policy development process. And to talk about that more, I'm going to invite our first guest speaker. This is Jared Fry from Wingate University. Last year he served as a policy vice president at his chapter, and now he serves on the APhA-ASP Policy Standing Committee. So Jared, take it away.
Hey everyone, so as Lauren mentioned, my name is Jared Fry. I'm a third-year student pharmacist at Wingate University School of Pharmacy. Before I really begin about how I engaged my chapter in the policy process, I want to give a little background information about how I was introduced into the policy process. So I've always had a love for policy. I was in SGA in undergrad and advocating for something that I truly care about. And as a young kid, I was always told by my parents that in order to see change, there has to be initiative for that change. As policy vice president, you are the individual who can ignite that interest within your chapter and pioneer the change for our profession. So as a first-year student pharmacist, my chapter had no idea what policy process really was. We didn't even have a policy vice president, and I was asked by my chapter president to fulfill the role as the policy vice president. I was like, me as a first year, you want me to take on this role? And I accepted the offer. Had no idea what that would consume of. But I knew that previously I loved policy. I really liked seeing change take place. So I reached out to my regional delegate about the duties and deadlines that were pertinent to my role as a policy vice president. I also utilized the toolkit to help mold the minute details that were going to be placed in front of me. I realized that the hardest thing about this whole process is how am I, as a first year, going to get all these other student pharmacists who seem not interested in policy at all, engaged and interested and involved within this policy process that can one day possibly shape and change the future of our profession. And the one thing I realized is all of us are competitive, at least at my school we are. And whenever there's a competition, and if it's associated with an award, there's more likely people are going to get involved. So I asked my chapter members to find things within the profession of pharmacy that can be improved upon or changed that would enhance the care that we provide to our patients. The two individuals who created the best idea would therefore get an award, such as a Starbucks gift card, which that's what we gave. I set out a timeline of when I wanted stuff due, and I gave my chapter members 2 weeks to submit ideas that they saw were pertinent to our profession and changing the future of our profession. I asked them to please email me or see me in person and tell me their idea, or use a Google form and place their idea into that. During this 2 weeks of them able to put into their ideas into these forms and emailing me, I also asked them, I seeked out individuals who's in our chapter who are not active members. So they're in our chapter, but they're not really involved in any patient care, such as Operation Heart or Operation Diabetes. And I sought them out in order to find what, basically to try to get them involved with our chapter. And basically said, I need help writing these resolutions, and I want your input. I think that you'd be a great, valuable asset to this committee. After the 2 weeks, during the chapter meeting, we had a policy debate where the chapter could debate their proposed ideas, and let me tell you, that debate got pretty intense, a lot more than I thought it would be. Individuals who could vote using clickers, where each individual had the opportunity to vote on the resolutions they believe were the most pertinent. We also ran this debate based on how MRM and annual House of Delegates is ran, so that individuals are more comfortable whenever they go to MRM and annual. Now, this took a lot of time planning with our regional delegate to figure out how it actually works, since I never went to MRM or annual before. And this is something that's I feel very important for you as policy VPs to reach out to your regional delegates and policy standing committee members and ask, what can I do, and do you have any other ideas for me? Because that was a great help for me. Also, our chapter provided pizza for the attendees of the debate. And one thing I've always heard is, remember, the way to a man's heart is through food. So, hey, we provided food. And also some women. I was shocked by how much interaction I got from the chapter overall. We had absolutely no policy involvement before, and this competition made a huge turnout at our chapter, one of the biggest events of the semester. Overall, my suggestion to you to engage your chapter is make some type of competition between maybe first years, second years, and third years, or individual members. Provide an award for the individuals or the class that has the best ideas. So if you want to do it between, let's say, first year, second year, and third years, maybe provide like a small trophy. So maybe you've heard of, back in high school, there was a thing called the spirit stick, and the person who had the most spirit, or the class that came up with the best policy in this way, would get the trophy, and you could place it in your school of pharmacy. And this is a great way to get the whole class involved. Or give an award that you feel like everyone wants within your school. Maybe a gift card to your university's bookstore, or a gift card to the local coffee shop down the road. And provide food. This is an easy way to get individuals involved and present to your meeting. And I highly suggest providing that food after the meeting to ensure that everyone sticks around throughout the meeting. Thank you for your time, and now I'm going to kick it back to Lauren.
Thanks, Jared. And I can also second that food is a very significant motivator for a lot of us as student pharmacists, and it actually is something that we talk about in APhA-ASP, which is the pizza in policy. So sometimes the pizza in policy can be a really great method to get people engaged in policy, or at least get a captive audience. So thanks so much for sharing, Jared. And Jared is going to be available for questions if you have anything on the webinar tonight, or you can also email him at that address there. So as policy vice presidents, I hope you see that you do play a huge role in the policy development process, and ultimately it is going to be you who guides the chapter through this process. Traditionally, policy vice presidents also serve as chapter delegates, both at the mid-year regional meeting and the APhA annual meeting and exposition. I have to say that this was one of my favorite things about being policy vice president. It's such an honor to be able to represent my chapter members and really speak as the voice of a collective group of student pharmacists. And I hope that you will fulfill that role for your chapter. We would love to see you at the mid-year regional meetings in particular coming up. But if for whatever reason you aren't able to make it to the meeting, or if you do have someone in your chapter who just really wants to serve as the delegate, and it's a fantastic way to help get people involved, make sure that you do have someone from your chapter in that seat so your chapter gets that vote and gets that voice. It's incredibly important to us as an Academy of Student Pharmacists, and indeed to creating the collective voice of us as a profession. So we'll hope to see you there. And actually, to talk about that next, we're going to do a quick MRM preview. And I'd like to invite Adam Tyerman from the University at Buffalo School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences to speak about his experiences last year as regional delegate for Region 1. To talk about how to prepare for the MRM policy development process, and his experience as regional delegate. So I'm going to turn that over to Adam.
Thank you, Lauren. As she stated, my name is Adam Tyerman. I'm from the University of Buffalo. I'm a final year pharmacy student. And going into MRM, policy vice presidents, if you haven't heard from your regional delegate yet, they will be in contact with you soon. And your regional delegate is really your guide through this entire policy process. So never be afraid to reach out for them or those of us on the Policy Standing Committee if you have any questions or concerns. We're here to help you. So kind of the timeline leading into MRM, 4 weeks prior, we ask that you have 2 proposed resolutions from your chapter that you submit to your delegate. Then a week later, before MRM, 3 weeks before, you'll have a regional webinar hosted by your regional delegate, where you as a chapter will be given an opportunity to present your resolutions to the rest of your region. And this is not really a time for extensive debate, but rather a forum where other chapters can offer constructive criticism, seek clarification, or look for opportunities to collaborate with you. We really encourage that every chapter has at least one representative on the webinar, but it's open to your entire member base, so if you have anyone else who's interested in policy, it's really a great opportunity for them to see the process in action. 2 weeks prior, we ask that you submit your finalized resolution and a full background statement. And really make sure you take some time to craft a strong background statement, as this captures your why and why you think the resolution that you're submitting is important. And it's how a lot of the chapters in your region are going to be making a decision about how they want to vote. 1 week prior, you're going to be given a full list of all the proposed resolutions from your region and the background statements. And we really encourage you to make sure you have a general body meeting leading into MRM so that the voice of your entire chapter can be heard, not just those who are going to be in attendance. Going into MRM itself, as Lauren said, you're going to have the opportunity to serve as your chapter delegate or appoint someone who's really interested in policy to have that seat. And while the formal structure of the closing business meeting can seem daunting, the process is really quite simple. There's going to be training at MRM for you on how to be the delegate, and your regional delegate will be happy to walk you through the process. I enjoyed my time as delegate. It really is, as opposed to annual, which is a really big forum, the regional forums are a little bit smaller. You really get to know everyone. You really get to work with them one-on-one. MRM is also the place where those regional officer elections take place. If you or anyone in your chapter that you're aware of is interested in running for a regional position, please reach out to your current regional officers. They're more than happy to give you a sense for what they do in their position and answer any of your questions. And as we all know in pharmacy school, time flies, so October may seem far off, but registration for MRM is now open, and you can see the 3 weekends, if Lauren will advance the slide for me. Okay, so you can see the 3 weekends that MRM is being held this year, broken down by region. Registration is now open, and we encourage you to check out the Facebook page. And that's all I have. I'll also be available. My contact information will be in here. If anyone has any questions about any of the regional officer positions or the policy process, please feel free. Back to Lauren.
Thanks, Adam. So I'm just going to add my 2 cents because I just love MRM. So I really hope that we'll see all of you there. And for those of you who have already attended in past years, make sure to share your stories with your chapter members so that we can get everyone, all of our student pharmacists to MRMs as possible. And I feel particularly strongly about this is because it was my first MRM as a first-year student pharmacist where I really got involved in APhA-ASP, and I fell in love with the policy development process and the idea of advocacy for the profession. And so I feel so strongly about MRM is because I want that same sort of experience for all of my fellow student pharmacists. So visit our event pages, share them, and then talk about your experiences with your chapter members, and I'll see you there. Okay, so next up, I'd like to talk about the Pharmacists Provide Care campaign. This is our main legislative agenda for the last 2 years, and it is that to get pharmacists recognized as healthcare providers in the Social Security Act. We have 2 bills that have been introduced, one on the House side, H.R. 592, and one on the Senate side, S. 314. And this legislation would allow pharmacists to be reimbursed under Medicare Part B for services provided in medically underserved areas under the current state scope of practice. It is very exciting and very encouraging that we have 185 co-sponsors on the House side and 26 on the Senate side. This is phenomenal, and really, student pharmacists have been so instrumental in this process from the beginning. Not only have we sent thousands of letters and emails, but also lots of visits to our legislators. In fact, at the Summer Leadership Institute this past July, we had student pharmacists, your student leaders from your chapter level, go to the Hill and talk to their legislators. From those visits, just on that one day, we got 12 co-sponsors in the House side and 2 co-sponsors on the Senate side. So student pharmacists can and have made a difference in this campaign, and I fully expect that we will continue to do so. So as you're starting off your year, head to the Pharmacists Provide Care website. This is the APhA campaign for provider status. Not only can you join as a supporter there, you can send a letter to your legislators, and you can also get lots of information about this legislation. Information to share with your chapters and information to share with your legislators. And at this point, I would like to invite Corey Daniels to talk. She's from the University of Mississippi, and she served as policy vice president last year. She's particularly qualified to speak on this because she was recently recognized as a Pharmacists Provide Care champion, one of our provider status champions, meaning that we recognized her for being so instrumental in not only being involved in the provider status campaign herself, but also in getting her chapter and other pharmacists and student pharmacists involved. So I wanted to have her speak a little bit today about the things that she did on her chapter level and things that you can do too. So with that, I'll turn it over to Corey. Corey, are you there? Okay, well, looks like we may have lost Corey.
Hey, sorry about that.
Okay, great.
Lauren, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself.
Oh.
Hello, everyone. So as Lauren said, my name is Corey Daniels, and I'm a current PY3 for the University of Mississippi. And I got really excited when I heard about the Pharmacists Provide Care initiatives, and I started off with our chapter's Operation Immunization. And once we vaccinated a patient, I took the time to ask them if they had a moment for me to talk to them. And I gave them my elevator speech about HR 4190, which was the House bill at that time. And afterward, I just asked them if they would mind signing a card saying they supported the legislation. And at the end of our patient care event, we got 120 cards signed. And we ended up vaccinating about 1,000 people, but that's still great because these are just regular students. And this can also be done at blood pressure, glucose screenings, and just take the time to ask the patient if they would take a minute to write a couple of sentences about what you just did for them. And I felt like it's really important to take the opportunity you can to educate the patients, because raising their awareness increases their support for the profession of pharmacy. And the way I really incorporated our members was I took about 15 minutes or so during a meeting, and I just told them everything that I knew about HR 4190. And I took the time to really let them know how it would benefit their career and why it would be important for them to be active supporters. And I gave them some facts and some numbers to really grab their attention, such as Mississippi has 100% of our counties considered medically underserved. And I incentivized them to write letters. So aside from food, I talked to one of our professors, and our PY2 law professor actually agreed to give bonus points to people that participated. And we also have a strict dress code, so if any of y'all have a dress code, you can talk to an administrator about having a dress down day for those that want to write letters. And then we actually took time during a chapter to write letters to our representatives. We had a general introduction for everyone to write, just introducing what the bill is, and then we asked them to write a few sentences giving personal reasons as to why that student wanted the representative support. And it made each letter unique and addressed dozens of different ways that the legislation would benefit the constituents. I also did some research into finding out which representatives had not co-sponsored the bill, and we really targeted them. And one thing I want to do this year on the Jackson campus is write thank you letters to people that have co-sponsored the bill, such as both of our senators and the 3 representatives that have co-sponsored that one. So if you have any questions about ways to incorporate your chapter or any ideas that you would like to bounce off of me, my email is at the bottom and I check it frequently, so I'd be happy to talk to you, and I'll also be around for questions. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks so much for sharing all that, Corey. I hope that, like, listening to her, you see that student pharmacists really can make a difference. So please do join the campaign, help get your chapter members engaged, encourage them to join. It's all on www.pharmacistprovidecare.com. But for many student pharmacists, we enter pharmacy school not really knowing much about grassroots advocacy. I know that for me, that was certainly the case. And for that reason, a couple years ago, the APhA-ASP initiated the Advocate Training Series. And this is a training series specifically designed to help student pharmacists learn to advocate and then help them put those skills to use. So we are continuing this program this year with some updated requirements. Those 4 requirements are to attend an ATS training session, an ATS webinar, participate in an office visit with a federal legislator, and this can take, or legislative aid, and this may take place either at Washington, D.C. if you're able to get there, but if not, all legislators have district offices that are very close to home, and so you can do that visit there. Also, participating in the Back the PAC Challenge by making a minimum $5 donation to the APhA PAC. Another update to the program is that we've updated the credit process. So upon completion of each activity, a code will be generated, and then you can enter that code to claim credit. For those of you who have participated in the leadership training series, this is a very similar process in terms of claiming credit. And we hope that it's going to make it a lot easier for people to claim that credit and participate in the advocate training series. In terms of the time frame, we recommend to complete the series each year because the reason these are the 4 requirements is that these are things that student pharmacists should be doing. And so we hope that you'll complete the series with us every year, and we'll award a letter of recognition in the spring. However, if you'd like to extend the time frame beyond a year, that's perfectly fine too for the length of your time as a student pharmacist. And speaking of Back the Pack, so the Back the Pack Challenge is designed to raise money for the APhA Political Action Committee. The role of the Political Action Committee is to support federal candidates who are pharmacy champions or friends of pharmacy. It's so essential to have a strong PAC to as a way of getting the dialogue started between the association and its members and our legislator. To my mind, it's a complement of our grassroots advocacy efforts. The main roles of the policy vice president in this are understanding the donation rules. Because it is a PAC, it is highly regulated, and so there are very specific ways that money can be raised and money can be donated. And so it falls to the policy vice president to really understand those rules. And don't worry, we've got information on the website, and we also hold a webinar every year to talk about it. And then the policy vice president will also manage fundraising activities. So not just like the actual logistics of it, but I encourage you to think of fun ways to raise money for the PAC, ways that are going to engage the chapter members, make it fun, but also teach the chapter about policy and advocacy, and in particular provider status, since that is the focus of the APhA PAC right now. So the top 5 fundraising chapters will be recognized at the APhA annual meeting. And I'd also encourage you to involve your new practitioners and alumni to participate. As long as they are members of APhA, they may participate in the Back the Pack campaign. And many chapters who have been successful have encouraged them to match student pharmacist contributions, thereby doubling the input of student pharmacists. So Corey mentioned the policy postcard challenge, and this is a very unique part of our policy and advocacy programming because it serves as a link between our patient care endeavors and our professional advocacy endeavors by encouraging our patients to advocate for us. So you heard Corey talk about it, so we know University of Mississippi participates, but I'd like to know whether your chapter has ever participated in the APhA-ASP Policy Postcard Challenge. Keith, if you wouldn't mind opening up the poll for us.
Sounds good. It's open right now. All right, about 85% have voted. Leave it open for another 5 seconds. All right, we're going to close that poll there. And so, Lauren, your results are 37% yes, 37% no, and 27% I don't know.
Okay. So I hope that regardless of whether your chapter has participated in the past, and that's fantastic that it looks like it's almost 40% of our audience, I hope that you will participate this year. And in order to encourage participation, we have actually created a new and improved policy postcard challenge. At its core, it remains the same, as in it is still a link between patient care and advocacy. It is still something to bring to your patient care events, talk and use as a tool to talk with your patients about the impact that provider status could have on the community and your ability to take care of patients. but we've made it easier to use and less costly for chapters. So first off, it will be provided by APhA. We're going to distribute the cards in late August, and we will need, and you can request those cards. Furthermore, in terms of like actually using them, where before it required a fairly good amount of time to get the card filled out, we've streamlined that some so that it only requires the patient name and zip code in order to figure out which legislator to send it to. And lastly, these cards are designed in such a way that they can be mailed in bulk to legislators, thereby like reducing the amount of postage, decreasing the financial burden on chapters to participate in this challenge. So I'm going to anticipate some questions that I imagine you may have. So if you still have a previous version of the postcard, just use them. That's fantastic. You already have them. Go ahead and use them. And you can go ahead and send them in bulk if you'd like, or you may continue to send them individually, chapter's choice. And when you run out of cards, you can reorder some more. We'll have the link up on the policy and advocacy section on pharmacist.com. Okay, and one of the last notes to make in this discussion is we've spent a lot of time talking about various initiatives that happen on the federal level, most notably provider status. However, if you think back to what we talked about, what the bill actually says about provider status, you'll notice that it's under the current state scope of practice. And so that's why it is equally important to work with your state association as one of your policy and advocacy venues. So your scope of practice is determined on a state level. So let's fast forward to when provider status becomes law. Your ability to implement provider status as a meaningful patient care process is going to be determined by whether your state scope of practice allows you to perform those activities. So our state associations need our support as student pharmacists, and it is absolutely in our best interest to give it. Keep in mind that anything that the state association puts in place now, that is going to affect us as future practitioners. So, action item for right now, get in touch with your state association. Reach out and talk with them. And then let your chapter know that this is also a level to be thinking on. So not only thinking about the national initiatives, but also any initiative that might be relevant to your state right now. For example, Tennessee last year passed a Collaborative Practice Act that is going to be so important for being able to take care of patients once we have provider status. So there might be something like that in your state as well, so get in touch. So we've talked about a lot of information today, a lot of different initiatives, lots of programming. And so there are many, many resources for you. These can be found primarily online at pharmacist.com/APhAASP, but also keep in mind that your policy standing committee, your regional delegates are also fantastic resources for you. These are, by and large, people who have served as policy vice presidents. There are regional experts on the policy development process and our advocacy initiatives. So please do reach out to all of us, myself included, if you have any questions. We're here to help you be successful this year. In terms of where to find those resources online, if you go to pharmacist.com/APhA-ASP, first heading is the Policy and Advocacy portal. Follow that link and you'll have everything laid out there. So this is the contact information for the Policy Standing Committee. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Same goes for your regional delegates. These are in particular the people to talk with if you have any questions regarding the policy development process leading up to MRM. Like Jared said, your regional delegates can be very, very helpful to you, just as they were to Jared, just as I hope I was to policy vice presidents in my region last year. Please reach out. And so With that, we've reached the end of what I wanted to talk with you about, so please do ask your questions. While you're typing your questions into the chat box, I'm going to turn this over to Keith Marciniak to talk about some of the other things going on in APhA-ASP.
Great, thank you very much, Lauren. While you guys are putting your questions in there, try to be as specific as you can. What we'll do is we'll either call on you if your hand's raised, or we'll read your question aloud and we'll make sure we get that answered. So I'll let you populate those questions in there. First off, we want to make sure everybody stays connected to APhA-ASP. We've got a variety of opportunities for you to make sure that you're completely engaged with what we're doing. So definitely the first place to go is our Facebook page. That's the primary area where our Communications Standing Committee updates and posts things that are happening on a daily basis. But they would also love to hear what's going on at your chapter. So if you have posts that you've been putting up about your legislative days or great policy ideas, or if you've got a picture with a state legislator, please, please, please pass those along to our standing committees, not only the policy committee, but the Communications Standing Committee, because we'd love to post that on our national page and recognize your chapter. Also, our Twitter account. We do follow Twitter quite a bit, and we do post quite a bit. And we've got a lot of chapters that follow us out there on Twitter. Our YouTube channel. This is where all of our webinar week recordings will be. So early next week, we'll have all of the webinars that we're doing this week. They'll be up on the YouTube channel, as well as a variety of things such as the National Executive Committee. They actually put together a Pharmacists Provide Care campaign video. That'll be up there, as well as all of our National Patient Counseling Competition, all of our Patient Care Project videos. And new to APhA-ASP over the past year or so, we have an Instagram account, so definitely check that out. If you don't mind jumping to the next slide there, I'd appreciate it, Lauren. Something also I want everybody to make sure that you're definitely involved with is student outreach. If you are scheduled this year to have a student outreach visit, we'd love to come visit you. We've got about 60 chapters that we try to budget to go to each year. And the real purpose of student outreach is to kind of see how your chapter's doing. It's not a grading process, but it is a little bit of a chapter checkup. And we utilize this as an opportunity to meet with your chapter advisor, to meet with your executive committee, to meet with your chapter president, to answer any questions that you may have about APhA-ASP, but to also learn more about your chapter and figure out ways where we can build some synergies kind of moving forward. We also use it as a tool to increase membership. So through that general meeting, if you have your National Executive Committee officer coming or a national staff member, we would definitely love to get your chapter passionate and excited about joining APhA-ASP, and we can really do that through that student outreach presentation. So we've had probably about 40 chapters or so sign up. We did sign out a few during the second round, but we're still reaching out to those schools that haven't gotten a hold of us. But if you'd like to have a visit, definitely contact Candace, and we'll try to get you into the rotation. I'm sorry, we get a little bit of a delay here from India. Something also I want to mention is OTC Literacy. This is our newest APhA-ASP patient care project. We actually launched this at the Summer Leadership Institute this year, but it builds off of policy, and that's the reason why we want to mention it tonight. 2015.2, Labeling and Measurement of Oral Liquids and Medications, basically said that APhA-ASP supports that our patients, as well as pharmacists and student pharmacists, really promote using dosing syringes or devices that are more precise than, say, tablespoons or teaspoons. We find that a lot of missed dosing happens, especially for our little ones, for our infants and our toddlers, because parents aren't using the proper measuring device to provide acetaminophen or ibuprofen. So we launched this year in partnership with McNeil and Scholastic. It's a program called OTC Literacy. We want to build on the successful partnerships that we've had with Generation RX to go into schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and really focused on 5th and 6th graders. We found that about 90% of those who are about age 16 and under have self-medicated at some point. So it's right around that age of 11 or 12 when students start taking Advil, taking acetaminophen for themselves, taking cough medicine. So we want to educate them on how to read medicines, follow labels properly, store their medication, as well as talk to a parent before kind of taking those. So utilize this to make sure that you use your policy postcards during it, and hopefully we can build a great program and build on the legacy of APhA-ASP patient care projects with this newest one. All right. Now our foundation, they also have programs out there for students to get involved in. Their newest series is called the Pharmacy Hero Series, which we want student pharmacists to really get engaged with the foundation. You can do so by providing funding to the foundation. And what they do with a lot of that funding is they kind of turn it back around and provide scholarships and internships for student pharmacists. We have incentive grants that we provide to pharmacists to kind of go out and build an innovative project or program within their local pharmacy or the local area. We also have a lot of incentive grants for residents. So right after you graduate, we'd love to have you apply for our incentive grants program in your residency. And then also Brian Donahue, who is the past APhA-ASP National Member at Large. He is currently our executive resident. So he's working here at APhA headquarters, learning about association management and leadership. And this is a great opportunity for you to participate in. So I encourage you guys to check out the foundation and provide this information to your chapter members. All right. And then finally, our last slide here is just a quick promo for the Joint Federal Pharmacy Seminar. What it is all of the Joint Federal Pharmacy Forces, so this is Army, Navy, Air Force, the Coast Guard, as well as our Public Health Service and Indian Health Service. They meet each year for a meeting, and this happens just to be in Washington, D.C. this year, October 19th through the 22nd, which is on the end of our Region 2 and Region 3 MRMs. But we have a full day of programming for student pharmacists on Monday. We had about 100 student pharmacists who were primarily locally in the Washington, D.C. area come in, but I encourage you, if you would like to get in either the military or Federal Pharmacy Services, VA, something along that line, if you're interested in this, this is a great opportunity to not only network, but learn more about this as a career option. So there is student pricing. I encourage you to go online to jfpsinfo.org to find out some more information. So, all right, now we're going to jump over right now to our Q&A portion here. We definitely want you to continue asking questions as I've been reading here. We've got quite a few questions that have come in. For those students who are wondering, ATS, the Advocate Training Series, we want to make sure that you do get credit. And for those student pharmacists who participated in tonight, as well as if you went to Summer Leadership Institute and you did a Hill visit, those will count. We actually have your name and information, and once we get the pharmacist.com site set up with the My Learning link, you'll be able to go do that. And what we'll do is we'll send out a blast email. We'll give you a specific code saying, hey, it's time to go do that. But we're looking at that late September, early October timeframe to get that ready for mid-year regional meetings. Fortunately, we didn't have it ready for tonight's webinar to kind of send that out. So that was one of the questions and a few of the questions that we've been asked thus far. Where will the ATS sessions be offered? Danielle Bell asked that question. Great question. ATS is going to be offered, as Lauren said earlier, at the mid-year regional meeting. So there's a couple opportunities for you to participate at MRMs. We're over, at least this year, we're going to have another for pharmacists provide care or provider status type of program. Annual meeting, a lot of our policy initiatives and policy workshops. We'll have a webinar or two related to policy that you're going to be able to participate in. And then it also comes down to those things that you do on your own. So working with a PAC to make sure that you've got great PAC programming, as well as making sure that you're going to visit your legislators and writing to your legislators. So those will kind of be involved year-round. A couple other questions related to the policy postcards tonight. Nancy asked, do chapters cover postage fees when sending the policy postcards? Yes, the chapters do. The chapters are responsible for that. And that's one of the reasons why we went to a more or less general policy postcard. It's going to look very similar to the Pharmacists Provide Care sign-up forms that we have, the smaller size, where it gives them facts and information about pharmacists, what we can do, the services that we provide. And then on the back, your patient will write their address and their information, and they'll basically say that they support pharmacists being eligible to provide and be compensated for the services that they provide. So by doing that, instead of individually having to put a stamp on every postcard and paying for all that postage, what you're going to do is collect all of those cards and send them into a bulk shipment. So it's just one package, basically, that's going to be sent to your legislator's office. So we're actually going to cut down quite a bit on postage, and we're going to cut quite a bit down for printing, because APHA will be printing those cards for you. So hopefully that answered your question, Nancy. Will there be more information and steps about the Advocate Training Series available on pharmacist.com? Nathan Chang asked that question. Yes, as we go through, and we'll actually have a process, a kind of step-by-step process on how to go to the pharmacist.com link through the My Learn section, which is going to be very similar to the LTS that Lauren talked about earlier. But it's also very similar when you become a pharmacist and have to go in for continuing professional development as well as continuing pharmacy education. So your CE is going to be pretty much the same process. And it's always going to be in your pharmacist.com profile moving forward that you'll have that ATS credit to you. Cody asks, can you elaborate on the format of the resolution? Having never seen a policy resolution, it would be helpful to view a previous policy resolution that was well represented. Thank you. So Lauren, would you mind doing me a favor while I answer the next question? Would you mind pulling up on p.com the adopted resolutions book to show Cody where that is?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Jason Sparks asked, what would be the most efficient route of requesting postcards for a policy postcard challenge? We are going to have a link on p.com that's going to be available through the policy and advocacy section there. Right now we're going through a bit of transition here at the association. The public relations firm that's been helping us out for about the last 2 years they're no longer going to be with us they're only been here about a week or so. So we're kind of transitioning that over to APHA staff. So once we get that information of who that staff member is going to be, that'll be able to send those out. You'll be able to request those directly from that person. But we're going to send out a good little stack to each chapter kind of in advance. So hopefully that answers your question, Jason. Roger asks, I have 2 questions. Can we get copies of the slides used tonight? And then when will the ATS and Policy Postcard Challenge links be active for us to look at those programs? So Roger, you can absolutely have the slides tonight. We're going to record this. Everything's been recorded this evening. And then we'll post that on YouTube so you can watch it and use it. And if you'd like to get the slides, we can actually create a Dropbox account at the end of the week for all the webinar slides and post them for you. So those will be available on the webinar page through p.com. And I think I covered a little bit of the links on ATS as well as Policy Postcard Challenge there. Is there anything yet? Shannon asked about OTC Literacy on the website. Shannon White, Crystal Atwell right now is proofing the planning guide as well as the information on OTC Literacy. So that will be up very, very soon. The Education Standing Committee has been working really hard on that. And we have our patient care vice president webinar tomorrow night. So the goal is to get that up by the end of the week here. Otherwise, if you just Google OTC Literacy, you'll find the McNeil website as well as everything's hosted on the Scholastic website. You'll be able to go into the various sections they have in there for teachers, school nurses, as well as healthcare providers, and you'll be able to download a lot of the information and materials that's already there. They've got a ton of brochures, they've got posters, they've got great digital books for children to read, so if you'd like to do that, go ahead and do that there. All right, so Lauren Bodie has on pharmacist.com, she went to the main page, clicked on the policy and advocacy, and then she actually clicked on to the mid-year regional meeting policy process. And from there, you click on the resolutions book. That'll actually pull up our entire policy book there. And Cody, You'll be able, through the policy book, you'll be able to see all the policies that APhA-ASP has passed since the early 70s. We've had a House of Delegates during that entire time there, and you'll be able to kind of go through the book and see the policies that we still are actively working on, the ones that we still believe in but maybe aren't working on, and then the ones that are kind of just outdated. So that's where you find that policy book and the adopted resolutions. And I'd highly suggest that you look at the policies from the past couple years. They generally have a little bit more meat to them. They have a little bit more information or a little bit more detail, so we'd want you to structure your policies in those formats. So hopefully that helps you out there. All right. That looks like a lot of the questions that we've had here. Lauren, would you mind popping back out now that you showed Cody that? Go back to your PowerPoint and go into the slide where you have your policy standing committee and all the contact information. Jennifer Liang has asked and requested that there. Looks like we're out of questions, and if you guys have, there's one person with their hand raised. Cody, did you want to ask another question there, or we're going to unmute you? Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, no, I didn't have any questions.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, that kind of looks like it's it. Lauren, I'll turn it back over to you, and you can close out tonight.
Okay, well, I just want to say I really appreciate everyone coming on to the webinar tonight. I'm looking forward to a very exciting and successful year. So I hope I get to meet a lot of you as I'm going on my outreach visits. But if not, please do know that you can always contact me, any of the policy standing committee or regional delegates. So other than that, policy on.